The New York Giants rookies report tomorrow. They'll take their physicals and then they'll sign their deals or their waivers so that they can get on the field for their first practice in Giants uniforms on Friday. What can we expect? Let's talk about it next on the Big Blue Breakdown live. Hi, everybody. I'm Paul Dottino. So good to see you again here, back on the program, back to our usual Wednesday night time at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We're going to be with you for at least the next hour or so, and coming up in just a bit, a very special guest, former Giants and Penn State linebacker Brandon Short, who played on the Super Bowl 35 team, actually went to 3 different playoff appearances with the New York Giants. Had a couple of years he also played with the Carolina Panthers. Anyway, he is part of the board of trustees over at Penn State University and knows about as much as you could possibly know about first-round draft pick Abdul Carter. And we certainly hope that you enjoy listening to Brandon Short in just a little bit as he gives you a detailed scouting report and preview as to what you can expect from this really highly heralded rookie who was the third overall pick in this past NFL draft. All right, to get you guys caught up a little bit on just what's been happening here in the NFC East, well, you guys know about that trade that happened earlier this morning, right? George Pickens of the Pittsburgh Steelers dealt in a multi-draft pick trade to the Dallas Cowboys. Now, boy, if you're the New York Giants, aren't you happy that you signed free agent cornerback Paul Thibodeaux from the New Orleans Saints earlier during this offseason? You know, Thibodeaux was a highly sought-after, high-premium cornerback on the market, and the Giants wasted little time grabbing him. And that's a really, really smart move, especially now when you look at the passing attack of Dallas. They're going to pair C.D. Lamb with George Pickens. That is one formidable duo. Now, Pickens is in the last year of his contract. He's had a lot of off-the-field issues, ruffling feathers, and had a lot of rough edges. And so, obviously, Pittsburgh decided that they probably were not going to re-sign him to an extension. And so they have parted ways with him before committing big-time money to the wide receiver and shipped him off to a Cowboys team that was desperate for a number 2 receiver. It remains to be seen how well he acclimates himself into the Dallas Cowboys system. Lord only knows. Again, we're talking about a guy who has had a lot of trouble, keeping on the straight and narrow with the Steelers. It will be interesting to see how that works out in Dallas. I will tell you something else, though, and this is an interesting fact. You're looking at a Dallas team that has signed Lamb to an extension. We know that the deal Dak Prescott has is going to skyrocket his cap numbers over the next couple of years. We also know that Micah Parsons is looking for a new contract. Wow. You know, they're kind of putting themselves in a real economic pickle if Pickens turns out to be more than a one-year rental. Anyway, I mention that only because that was a big news item that impacts the NFC East. And that's why I bring that up. I know it's not specifically Giants related, but it certainly is a big item. Now, speaking of salary cap, I've had a lot of folks ask me in recent days, are the Giants done making moves? Well, here's the current situation based on over the cap. The Giants have 80 players under contract. You're allowed to have 90, okay, when you go to training camp. Right now, they have 80. They only have a little over $1 million in cap space. Well, you do the math. If you're going to add 10 more players, which they have a right to, but they don't have to, it's not required that you take 90 players to training camp, but, you're allowed up to 90. How are you going to fit 10 more players into $1.1 million. Very unlikely. So either they won't take a full 90 to training camp, or they're going to have to redo some deals. And in all likelihood, you go to the Brian Burnses of the world, some of the guys who are making the upper end money on the Giants, and you wind up reshuffling some of their money into bonus money and then extending them and pushing some money to the back end. I mean, this is what you have to do. So the Giants are going to have, as I said at the top of the program, all of their rookies, whether it's their draft choices, the undrafted rookie free agents who they've agreed to deals with but haven't actually signed, as well as a couple of dozen, if probably even more than that, tryout players. So what will happen is that all of these rookies plus selected first-year players, you get a little bit of an exemption there, they're going to come to the facility tomorrow. They will check in. They will go through their physicals. They pass their physicals. Then they either sign their contracts if they've got all the terms squared away, or they will sign a waiver. Once the signature is on the paper, that then allows them on Friday morning to hit the practice field with the rest of the rookies. Again, whoever signs gets to practice on Friday. If you don't sign, you don't get to practice. So we will see how many of the reported players, and there's been a slew of players reported to be coming to the Giants as undrafted rookie free agents. We will see how many of those guys actually do show up at the Giants facility and pass their physicals and sign their paperwork so that they can get helmets and uniforms and they can get to practice, okay? Although it won't be a full practice in full gear. But every year, there are guys who either don't show and decide not to come, guys who wind up going elsewhere because even though they had a verbal deal, they decided that they were going to land someplace else and decided that that's where they wanted to be. Or there are guys every year who fail their physicals. So we will see exactly who the Giants are able to put on the field at rookie minicamp. They'll be practicing on Friday and on Saturday. So that kind of gets you caught and updated on the happenings of the week down at the Giants facility. Now, in terms of the money I just talked about, $1.1 million or so in cap space according to Over the Cap. Now, why is that relevant? Well, because there are those folks out there who would still like to see the Giants try to add a late free agent. If you've looked at the available free agents right now, it's kind of slim pickings. Now, what position would you like to go to? There are probably some positions that have some decent players and other positions that just don't. One of the positions got an extra guy added onto the list today when Gabe Davis, the former Buffalo Bill and Jacksonville Jaguar, was released by Jacksonville. And of course, immediately, there were people trying to make the connection to Gabe Davis, Joe Schoen, and Brian Daboll, all of whom spent time with Buffalo. Schoen and Daboll themselves, over the years, have spoke well of Davis. And that's all true. Now, at the same time, we just told you about the Giants' money crunch. I don't know how much money Gabe Davis may or may not want to get back into the NFL on maybe a one-year prove-it deal. I have no idea what kind of numbers he's looking for. Now, is it possible that there may be a conversation or at least some contact? I'm sure it's possible. But you have to think about this. And I'm not saying that he would not be a good addition. I'm really not going to say that. But I don't know where he's at. In Buffalo, he was a good player, but I don't think he ever truly reached the potential or the ceiling that they had for him. That's why he wound up leaving after 4 years and went to Jacksonville. It didn't work out in Jacksonville at all. They didn't think they were getting as much bang for the buck as they needed to get, and that's why he's been let go. So I'm not sure exactly where the 2025 version of Gabe Davis is at, how the Giants feel about him, how he feels about, possibly playing for Dable and Shane again. I just don't have that answer. I have not talked to the head coach, nor have I talked to Joe Shane, nor have I talked to Gabe Davis. But I just think that there were too many people who immediately had a knee-jerk reaction that, Gabe Davis is free, there's a fit with the Giants, he's got to go there. Well, you got to find out if there's a 1-2 from both sides. You have to find out what the money situation is going to be, because, as I said, the Giants are definitely in an economic pickle right now, although they can make some adjustments to free up some cash. But the other thing is, you have to say to yourself, and I don't know the answer to this because I don't know what they think about their in-house guys, but you have to wonder, is he going to be able to fit into the Giants' wide receiver room, given the makeup of the guys they currently have? And if he is, where does he fit in? And is that the type of role that he might be interested in if he is going to play this season? And that's all part of what you have to think about before, people start jumping to conclusions. The Giants right now believe that Neighbors and Slayton, who they just re-signed, Darius Slayton was just re-signed to a pretty nice deal, I might add, are the two starting outside receivers, and Wan'Dale Robinson is their starting slot corner. So whenever they're going to have three on the field, those are the three guys. There's not any room for another guy as it stands right now in a 3 wide receiver set. I would assume, based on what we saw from Theo Johnson last year, if the Giants decide that they're going to want a 4th receiving target out in the field, they're going to flex out Theo Johnson as the tight end. And he will wind up being that 4th target in the pass play that they're going to try to execute. I don't think that any of those 4 guys would be behind Gabe Davis in a progression if you were going to put a pass play together. So I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm not saying he won't be here. I am saying there are a lot of questions you have to ask first before you start jumping to conclusions that Gabe Davis is a good fit for the Giants. I do think that the Giants could use some additional depth at wide receiver. I'm not disputing that. Now, could that depth come from Bryce Ford-Wheaton, who was a special teamer last year? Maybe it does. Could that depth come from one of the undrafted rookie free agents that is expected to come to the facility and practice here this weekend? Maybe it does. Could it be Gabe Davis? Maybe it is. But again, remember, Davis also has to want to be here. And I don't know, based on that depth chart, I'm not sure that he may not want to be somewhere else. So just things to ponder before anybody makes a quick knee-jerk reaction and jumps at, Gabe Davis, connection to Buffalo, he's got to be here. It just doesn't work that way, folks. All right, we'll be back again. Little programming note. We'll be back again next Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, with the next edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live. And, of course, you all know what it is. That is Schedule Release Day. Now, we're going to have a guest in just a moment here on tonight's program. But next week, what I really want to do, as I always do every year when the schedule comes out, I go through a detailed analysis of the pros and the cons based on what the coaches, the players, and the GMs might be thinking in terms of the logistics of the schedule. So I'll go over that strategically with you in next week's program. But what I really want to do next week is get your guys' take, because the schedule will come out next week at 8 o'clock. So schedule comes out, I'll give you my analysis, and then I want you guys to chime in with your chats, with your audio calls, and with your video calls, because I think that's going to be a very fun night. I am sure that everybody is going to have at least one opinion, if not more, about the Giants' schedule when it comes out. So please mark it down on your calendars. Next Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, Giants schedule release show. We'll be here live, and we are going to hash out everything positive and negative about the Giants' 2025 schedule. All right. It's time to bring in our special guest, and I'll get to your comments in just a bit. And again, I appreciate everybody joining the program again tonight. I know the Knicks are at halftime playing the Boston Celtics. They are behind, unfortunately, but we do know they overcame a 20-point deficit in the third quarter in Game 1 and did emerge victorious. So there's still hope. Having said that, I want to get to our guest tonight. Brandon Short is one of those guys who you really root for, because he's just a good, solid person. An individual who I got to know when he played for the Giants about 20 years ago. But why I wanted to have him on the program is to get a real feel for what Abdul Carter brought to the table at Penn State and how good he can truly become. Now, Brandon Short played at Penn State. For those of you who are a little bit younger and aren't aware, he played at Penn State. He was drafted by the Giants during the 2000 draft in the 4th round. He played for them in Super Bowl 35, so he was part of that NFC championship team. He's also on Penn State's board of directors, and he's really seen Carter from every angle. And this is a guy, remember, who spent 7 years in the NFL, including 5 with the Giants and 4 as a starting strong side outside linebacker. So he has an educated eye. I mean, when he tells you he sees this, that, and the other thing, he knows what's going on. This is not some media rep. This is not some draft scout. This is a guy who played the position and has an understanding of what Abdul Carter is thinking and doing when he gets on the field. So the first thing that I asked Brandon was to identify Carter's most valuable trait when he steps between the lines.
What impresses me the most about him is his motor. He never stops. Like you'll see some great players because they're so athletic, or they're so gifted that they like take plays off, and you will never see him take a play off. You know, he's playing defensive end, and he's in the picture, no matter where the ball is thrown. It can be thrown 20, 30 yards downfield, and you'll see Carter rush the quarterback and sprint down the field to try to track that ball down. That's something that if you don't watch him every day, or you don't follow him like I do, because I'm a Penn State linebacker, you might not see that. I mean, the Giants are really, really lucky to have him, and he's lucky to be in New York.
Where do you think he has made the most improvement from the time that he first got to Penn State, and then after the 3 years that he played for the Nittany Lions? Now he's got to make this jump to the NFL, and everybody knows that is a big step.
I mean, I think he made the most improvement in his edge rushing. I mean, but people don't understand that this was Abdul Carter's first year playing defensive end and within the Penn State community, because he was a first team, all Big Ten linebacker. I was like, why do you want to move this guy that's so good at linebacker to end? And I can remember going to the first, like my first spring practice, seeing him play at end, and like he was working with the number twos because he had just moved to end, and they could not conduct practice with him at the position. It was like they did say slow down, but it was like other guys are trying to get work out here. We got to see the running backs, the cut. We have to see the front side offensive linemen. I mean, they were passing the ball, but he was tapping Drew on his shoulder every time they running by him. But he's learned to use the bend. Maybe he did have that early on, but his bend off the edge is phenomenal. It's like something I haven't seen. He'll dip and rip and get low and be at a full speed and go right around you.
Well, because he played off-ball linebacker for the first 2 years before that conversion to edge rusher, as you just talked about, I'm curious, from your perspective, had he stayed as an off-ball linebacker, where do you think his ceiling would have been? I'm guessing that he, bursts onto the scene because he's an edge rusher. A lot of times the off-ball linebackers don't get as much pub.
Yeah, I guess the game has evolved, and you want your game wrecker and your best athletes to be able to go after the passer, because this is a quarterback-centric game, and anybody that can go after the quarterback, you want them there. But his ceiling I think he could have gone number 3 if he would have played off the ball. I mean, we played Abdul at spy sometimes. We took the Penn State's defense took him out of the rush and spied him occasionally. He got 3 or 4 sacks playing his old spy position, and he also he had a couple interceptions playing off the ball. So the defense would slide to protection him, so that our defensive coordinator would move him around. So I think he could have gone number 3 if he would have played off the ball as well, because the talent is evident.
Well, he has said to us, the New York media, in his brief interactions with us, that because he's only been an edge rusher for 1 year, he thinks there's a lot more to learn. So I'm curious as to what you see from him. What will he have to get better? What is he going to have to develop as he becomes an NFL player?
Well, I mean, this is nitpicky now, because we're talking about somebody that is it could have been a number 1 pick in the draft, but everyone can always get better. I mean, in NFL, just you got to use your hands, and you're refined your technique. Everybody is an All-American, some All-Pro, and you can go very, very far. No question, he's going to be an outstanding player, but he can be an all-time great player. If he uses his hands and works to become an all-around player.
Mm-hmm. How much strength do you think he'll add too? Because as well as I do, Brandon, guys get into the league and they still have to mature physically as well as mentally and everything else that comes with the pro game. He's about 6'3", 6'4", 250 pounds. Do you think there's much more room to add some more bulk or power to his game? Or is that not something you'd want to do because of his speed?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to be as big as you can without losing speed, and Abdul's naturally a big guy. I think you could play in that 3 technique. If people, I heard a knock on him is that was small, and does he do things going to get pushed around? No, I think he's going to be pushing people around. I mean, if you look at him, his frame, if you take a look at his neck, how it comes down, his neck doesn't come down, it goes out. And I think that he actually has trouble keeping the weight down versus the opposite. So he could bulk up. I think the Penn State program does a good job of preparing people for the league, but the NFL is the NFL, and there's always room for growth. So he could definitely put on weight, and as long as the speed and that his burst isn't affected, I mean, the sky's the limit.
Now, one of the common things a lot of the full experts have been talking about with him for the last year, they see the number 11, they talk about Micah Parsons, how he moved around in the Penn State defense, came to the NFL and became a game wrecker when the Cowboys started to use him more on the pass rush. I don't know that it's fair to compare players, so I won't ask you to do that. But I will ask you, for maybe what are the biggest similarities or the biggest differences that you see in those two players?
I had never seen like Micah play edge in college. So like Micah moved to edge when he got to the NFL. They moved him around. They brought him out to edge, but Micah was an off the ball linebacker. That probably explains why he was still on the board at number 11. It was a COVID year, and it was so he didn't play, but that explains why he was on the board at number 11. I see that in my mind. I think that Abdul is a more natural end than Micah. I think he is a bigger frame. He's naturally a bigger guy. But both are outstanding, and Micah is arguably the best defensive player in NFL. And you talk about comparisons, it's unfair to compare, but it is fair to compare. They came from the same place, wore the same number, and had a similar team. I think Abdul has that potential.
All right, well, let me ask you this. If you were the defensive coordinator of the Giants, and I know you're happy doing what you're doing now, so I won't ask you to take that office, but if you were, how would you work him into this defense? Because there were those people, and I'm not one of them, who said, well, you have Thibodeaux, you have Burns, why do you want to draft another edge rusher? Well, you and I know you can never have enough, but how would you work him into the lineup? How would you get this guy on the field?
I would move him around. He's first the NFL. You're drinking from the fire hose, so it could be a difficult transition for anybody. But depending how he picks up the defense, which I expect him to do well, I would also move him around. I would have like 3 defensive ends on the same on the field at the same time, similar to Spagnuolo, way they did back in the day when we played with Strahan, OC, and Tuck. In passing situations, you want to get your best guys, best pass rushers out on the field, and he would be the person that would be like sort of the joker, the one that I would like play in different positions and drop in sometimes and bring him sometimes. But in third down situations, I would have all 3 on the field, and then during the game, I would just rotate and have 3 starters, and if somebody gets the hot end, you stay with them and ride.
Now, everybody knows how pass rushers can sometimes get overzealous, and then they wind up getting caught out of position. In fact, some pass rushers don't even really want to play very much against the run. I mean, there's not a lot of headlines and not a lot of highlight tapes to be gained sometimes from these guys who simply want to get to the quarterback. So I asked Brandon Short to evaluate Carter's discipline within the scheme while he was with Penn State.
And he was a great fit. I'm not in the Penn State, defensive coordinating room, but I know a little bit about football, and he was rarely out of position. We were a number 3 defense in the country. It's just people were in the right spots, and there was enough room for Abdul to have a inside or outside move, when in crucial situations. But if it was time for him to crash down inside because somebody was coming from the outside, he was in the right spot, which is why the defense is sound. And I think that's why he was so highly regarded. I mean, you look at him on tape, you rarely will see him out of position or make it a mental error. And that's so important. I just love him.
Oh, no question. You know how coaches hate MEs. I mean, that's the first thing that's going to get your butt on the bench.
Yeah. Coaches sometimes give you a minus when you make the dang going play. Hey, coach, I got a tackle for loss. It's like minus. I'm not going to name any names, but they're bringing up old memories. Minus, I got a sack. I think it's a plus.
I catch you. So as a rookie, how much of an impact do you think he'll have now? Because obviously as he grows, matures, gains experience, and gains knowledge, he's got the potential to be a dominant player. We know that. But how do you keep fans, their expectations on an even keel without expecting too much from him right out of the box?
I don't think anybody's going to have higher expectations for him than he has like for himself. He's always chased excellence and greatness, and I think he'll do that as well. But it is the NFL, and there is a transition period for most people. I can remember like watching Micah in his first game playing linebacker, being called out for being out of position, like on a run pass read coming up, and people saying, "Oh, he's a bust. Look at him; he's out of position. He doesn't know what to do." And now he's going to be maybe the top non-quarterback player and paid player in the league. So there's definitely a transition, and you get better. Like every year, the biggest improvements in players are generally from their first year to their second year. Strahan, for example, arguably the best defensive end in Giants history, not best linebacker, but best defensive end, and arguably one of the best defensive ends of all time. And he had only a couple sacks his first few years until he became the best technician I've ever seen, with using his hands and positioning on, getting sacks.
All right, so we've all seen the tape, Brandon. Can you tell us something about the guy? What should we know about Abdul Carter? We know he's tough. We know he's intense. We know he loves ball. Heck, the way he came back after the injury and played against Notre Dame in the bowl game, had a sack and a bunch of tackles. There's a lot of stuff that we could see just by looking at the tape. What should the Giants know about this guy that they're getting?
He's a good person. I mean, his teammates love him, because he's put in, like, he's a team guy. He's put in team first, and he works with his kids in Philadelphia to try to give back in his community. He worked to give back on campus with things. We have something called Dance Marathon, actively participate in those things. I think he's a great guy and will be a good teammate and will be great in a locker. That's something that you don't see on tape. And if you didn't know, I've watched him from when he came in to where he is now and how he matured and he's grown as a man. So, I mean, that's like one of the things I admire most. I've seen his development, and he's a good player and a good guy.
Well, and that kind of ball shoots to a second question. Now he's going to be a rookie in the NFL as opposed to being the big honcho in the room, right? Where he was, I'm sure, one of the leaders of that Penn State squad. That can be an adjustment for some guys. How well do you think he'll melt in to maybe not being the biggest name in the room?
I mean, that remains to be seen. Once you get out on the field, I mean, it doesn't say first year, second year on you. The tape is the tape, but I think he'll handle it well. Just to learn. It took him some time to learn at Penn State. When he was moved to defensive end, they didn't slot him in at number one. He wasn't the starter on day one because he didn't know the plays. But ultimately, he became the starter because the tape doesn't lie.
Right. So you don't think the pressure of being a number one pick and number 3 overall and being in New York, that probably won't really affect him too much?
It can affect anybody. I doubt if it's going to affect him. I mean, he's coming from a place where he's confident in himself and his ability. He's been humbled before. It's not like he's never been knocked on his butt and got back up again. And he may have to be humbled a few times, but in the end, I'm confident that he'll make the adjustment.
All right. So the Giants hit the field for rookie minicamp. Actually, it is on Friday. They'll be on the field. What advice would you give him? You've been through this. You played 7 years in the league before. You've know what it's like to be a rookie trying to find your way. What advice would you give him as he steps on the field for the first time as a Giant and tries to navigate his first professional season?
Be a sponge. Not only in the film room or on and with the X's and O's, but look at the older guys and how they carry themselves and what they do, and try to look at the find people that you respect and admire and that are successful to where you want to be, and try to not necessarily emulate them, but pick up the things that they're doing that are differentiating them. So try to learn as much as you can from the older guys that have been in the locker room and been through this process.
Well, it's clear that he understands something about Giants tradition and history, because when he came here for the visit, as you know, he took the picture of Lawrence Taylor and even asked about the number. But it's obvious that he does have a very high regard for what being a Giants linebacker means.
Absolutely. I mean, one thing that you can say about that Abdul is he seeks greatness. He came to Penn State and took on the moniker of a number 11, knowing what that meant, and achieved, or at par, or maybe even surpassed some of the people there that had number 11. And it's although we're talking about Lawrence Taylor here, he wants to be a great linebacker, and he loves being a part of a traditional franchise, and Lawrence Taylor is the epitome of excellence, and he was seeking that. So I definitely don't knock him for that. I admire him for going for it. 43 53. I think he may have to negotiate with Darius on that one, but and Harry Carson, and Harry will be all right with it. So 53 is open. So.
And I know you remember some of those days yourself.
Yeah, Harry used to say, "Look at this imposter." Rich, you must see Harry give me a hard time about where his stuff is. Like, look, I'm holding it down, man. I'm holding this down for you. With respect. Standing on your shoulders.
Now, to clarify, many of you maybe don't remember when Brandon Short came in and played for the Giants. He wore Harry Carson's number 53 over his first 4 NFL seasons as a strong side linebacker with Big Blue. Then he signed a free agent contract with the Carolina Panthers. He was there for 2 seasons. Then he returned to the Giants in 2006, and he had to take number 54 because linebacker Reggie Torbor at that point had gotten number 53. So that kind of gets the whole numbers game out of the way. And for those of you who are too young to remember, that explains some of Short's humor at the end of that segment. So I figured while I had Brandon, and his attention was certainly very much appreciated, I figured I'd ask him about another Penn State alum who's already on the team. That is second-year tight end Thibodeaux Johnson. Now, Johnson's rookie season was derailed by a foot injury, but Short says there's a very high ceiling coming for him as well.
He was on the same field with Tyler Warren, and he was the better tight end at that time. And Tyler Warren is a generational player at Penn State, and he does it all. But at playing the position of tight end, our tight ends coach played the best player at that time. He has tremendous athletic ability. I think he tested as one of the top tight ends from an athletic skills level of any tight end in the draft history. If he can stay healthy, and that's the same thing with all of us. The sky's the limit. He has a very, very high ceiling. I mean, he can block. He can go up and catch contested balls. And he has a dog in him. All great offensive players, have a defensive mentality. I think about I played with Steve Smith. I played with Jeremy Shockey. Those are dudes that had that were defensive guys that I had an affinity towards, because they didn't just want to beat you. They didn't want to just score. They wanted to show you that they're better than you. And Theo has that in him. I've seen it.
Cool. Well, they say you got to be a little nuts, right, to be a defensive player. So maybe these offensive guys that you're talking about, and I knew Shockey too, he was a little nuts.
Yeah, they're a lot more cerebral over on that side of the ball. We're a little bit different over here, but that's all right. That's why you got multiple. That's why you got multiple positions. Some people aren't a good fit for certain things.
No doubt. Hey, Brandon, why don't you get everybody caught up on what you're doing these days? I know the Karli Short Foundation is something that's very dear to your heart. Maybe you could pass along some information on how people could maybe get involved in that as well.
Yes. So Tragically, I lost my daughter and her unborn child to gun violence in 2021. I'm a member of Penn State's Board of Trustees, and I know how difficult it is for people making a transition into school, especially people that have been suffered from gun violence. And we formed a foundation to provide scholarships for students that were affected by gun violence. Not only do we provide scholarships, we provide the mentorship and support that they need to get through those first years and to go off and be successful. We've raised, in the past 4 years, we've raised over $1 million. We have 9 scholars. We had our first scholar graduate. We have an annual gala in Pittsburgh. This year, it's on June 14th. We have auction items. The Giants are always so generous. You know, Mr. Mara, Allison Stang could be all in with having auction items. And, you know, our gala is always a good time, but what's even better is, like seeing the effect that our financial and emotional support has on these kids. That gun violence is an epidemic. It affects almost all of us, and this is our way to try to make an impact.
Folks, if you don't know Brandon Short, and I know I know him a lot better than most of you, first-class guy all the way, always was when he was with the Giants. I missed him when he went to Carolina. I was happy when he came back, and I'm so happy he could join us here today. Brandon, thank you.
He's a Giant. What's a Giant?
Switch to the Giants, my friend. Stay well.
Thank you.
That's former Giants and Penn State linebacker Brandon Short. Can't tell you how much I appreciate his time. And for more information on the Karli Short Better Tomorrow Foundation, their website, and I just posted it in the comment section of our chat, is KS Better Tomorrow, all one word, ksbettertomorrow.org. ksbettertomorrow.org. Brandon Short, terrific guy, and giving us some awesome details with a scouting report on what you can expect, not only in future years from Abdul Carter, but what this first-round draft pick might actually be able to do for the Giants as a rookie as he hits the field here in 2025. Now, for those of you who may have joined us a little bit late and didn't get to hear the entire interview with Brandon Short, at about 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time tonight, we will post the entire uncut Brandon Short interview in its entirety on the New York Giants on SI YouTube page. I'll also put a link on my Twitter page that will take you directly to that page if you prefer. Again, if you joined it in progress and you want to get the entire interview with Brandon Short, great stuff about Abdul Carter, about Theo Johnson, and just a couple of memories thrown in as well. As he says, once a Giant, always a Giant. And I love catching up to the guys that I covered in yesteryear. All right, let's get to some of your chats. And again, folks, don't be bashful. Chime in with your chats. Give me an audio call. Give me a video call. We're going to be here until at least 9 o'clock, up to the top of the hour. Whether or not we stay longer than that tonight, I'm not so sure. But we're going to get you for at least the next 20 minutes or so. So let's have a good time and talk some Giants football. Aiden Fink says, good evening. Paul, no sleep Dottino. I mean, come on. Who needs sleep, right? Isaac Morris says, how are we going to keep all these players? Well, again, as I said up at the top of the program, you know, you're allowed to take 90 players to training camp. And obviously, right before, the week one of the regular season, you got to get down to 53. And then after you make those cuts, you can then come back and add your practice squad guys. Right now, the Giants have 80 players under contract. They've got their draft picks who have yet to be signed. Okay, some of those guys might wind up signing in the next few days. Others might just sign waivers so that they can get on the practice field at rookie minicamp. Again, they hit the field beginning on Friday. Isaac, I'm not sure how many more players the Giants are going to add. They may get up to the full 90. They may keep a few empty spots. I honestly don't know. But they only have about $1.1 million of cap space right now. I believe they're last in the league And that according to overthecap.com, and they do a really good job of cataloging every team's finances. Now, somebody said on the Big Blue Kickoff show, I guess it was yesterday, I got a phone call, and the guy was complaining, and I think you all know who it is. I mean, if it's a complaint, you know where it's got to be coming from. But the guy up in Maine, yeah. He didn't seem to understand. He was complaining that the Giants don't have very much cap room. Well, that's true. But did you notice they signed well over a dozen players in free agency? They added a high-profile safety in Holland. They added a high-profile cornerback in Thibodeaux. They added a guy coming into his prime at defensive end in Golston, just right off the bat. Then, by the way, they had to add Russell Wilson at quarterback. They also added Jameis Winston as a backup quarterback. These things take money. And the Giants were very, very busy, amongst the most busiest teams in free agency with the numbers of players that they brought onto their roster. That was the beauty about having some legitimate cap space. They could be aggressive. And instead of, making a bunch of high-profile moves, they made the two really big ones, getting the secondary kind of squared away with Holland and Thibodeaux, and then went to the second level of free agency in terms of pricing and got Golston and got Russell Wilson, and then added some lower-priced free agents as well to help fortify a team that did not want to go into the draft having to be desperate. What do they always tell you? Don't go into the draft hungry. Don't go into the draft desperate, saying, oh, we have to draft this player or we have to draft this position because we simply don't have anybody there. Well, Joe Schoen did a great job in free agency setting himself up so that in each and every round of the draft, the Giants could legitimately take the best player available on the board. The beauty of it is, in almost every case, value matched need. And the Giants were able to fortify a handful of thin positions on their roster and on their depth chart by getting guys who happen to be the best player available at the time that they were picking. So, Isaac, I could appreciate the economic crunch, but Joe Schoen knows what he's doing. He's going to find a way to do what he needs to do. Isaac also says, I want Gabe. Yeah, he wants Gabriel Davis. He says, was he guaranteed money? Well, certainly when he signed with the Jaguars, and I don't have the numbers here handy. Let me see if I can look that up. He got good money from the Jaguars. That was a big-time free agent signing. So I'm sure he got some. Let's see here. What was his number? He got a $39 million contract from the Jaguars. 3 years, $39 million. Okay? I don't see the guarantee listed here. I apologize for that. Again, he's not a Giant, so in all honesty, I don't go really, really deep into worrying about other teams' contractual obligations. Let me just take a quick glance on the internet and see. Here we go. Davis signed a 3-year, $39 million contract last March. Wound up only playing 1 year with Jacksonville. He got a $10 million signing bonus that was fully guaranteed. So the cap hit now that the Jaguars are going to deal with is over $20 million by letting him go. So, he obviously did not give them their money's worth for whatever reason. And I'm not saying it's because he's a bad player, because he is a good player. He is a good quality NFL receiver. But where he would fit on the Giants, I'm not really sure. We went over the depth chart earlier in the program before Brandon Short came on. Last year, 20 receptions, 12 yards a catch, and 2 touchdowns. His average season through 5 NFL campaigns, is 42 grabs for 682 yards, which comes to 16 yards a catch, which is nice, and 7 touchdowns. That's pretty solid too. He's a good player. He's a solid NFL player. But is he better than Darius Slayton? I don't think so. And he's not a slot like Wan'Dale Robinson is. And we don't even have to ask the question if he's better than Malik Neighbors, do we? No, I didn't think we had to go there. So if you signed him, he'd be at best receiver number 4 on the depth chart. Again, there's a lot of considerations you'd have to go through to figure out if this would be a fit. Hey, I want to thank, of course, my man Thibodeaux, who is back. Salute again, always offering respect to the Big Blue Kickoff, and yours truly. Appreciate it, my man, with that entire rugby club over in Italy, coming through with another star super chat. And again, thank you to Thibodeaux, as we always do. He's always coming through for us, and really do appreciate not only his attention to the program, but his generosity as well. Big Blue also coming through. I got a message from Big Blue earlier today. Big Blue said to me, I got a dinner. Gonna be with some people. I'm gonna be busy. I'm gonna try to catch the program a little bit later on tonight. He's one of our regulars, and he was actually giving me a heads up that he might be joining us a little bit late. So Big Blue, I don't know if you're able to watch us right now, or you just were able to get in on the chat, but thank you for your generosity as well. Always appreciate having you to be part of the program. Maybe one day you'll call in. That would be really cool. Let me go back to our chats, and let's see who else that we have here. Gary Gaston says, hi, P. Brandon Short played good for us. Well, he started for 4 of his 5 seasons with the Giants. When he was a rookie in 2000, he was one of their special teams demons. And then after that became a strong side linebacker. And he started for 3 seasons, went to Carolina as a free agent, came back to the Giants in 2006, and he started at linebacker that year too, for about half the season, I believe, as I recall. Gary Gaston also asked you about how do you feel about Gabe Davis' relationship with Joe Shane and Brian Dable. I've addressed this already a couple of times on the program. Again, you got to be very careful jumping to conclusions and jumping to knee-jerk reactions. I'm not saying that Gabe Davis can't make it to the Giants. Of course it's possible. He is a good player. He is a quality NFL wide receiver. He certainly has a place in this league. I'm not sure if all the different machinations, though, fit really well for him to be a Giant. Aiden Fink says, yeah, that guy said Shane is doing a terrible job managing his money. Yes, that was a caller we had on Big Blue Kickoff, and clearly that is not the case. James O'Keefe says, Paul, nice piece with Brandon Short. I really liked him as a Giants linebacker. Well, and he's a heck of a good guy, too. Again, was on a Giants team that went to 3 different postseasons during his 5 years with the team. Big Blue does say, hey, he's on the LIRR, heading home and enjoying the program. So Big Blue did get an opportunity to catch part of the show tonight. James O'Keefe says, our roster this year is one of the best talent-wise and with some depth that I can recall for years. As long as the injury bug doesn't kill us, should be exciting. Well, James, the schedule is daunting based on the performance of the teams in 2024. Quite honestly, let me give you a little preview about next Wednesday's show. No, I don't have an advance on the schedule. But next Wednesday night, when we join you guys again live at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, okay, we're going to break down the pros and cons of the schedule as the NFL lays it out for the Giants. And I know you have no control over who you play, right? There's a rotating division thing going on, and then there's slots based on where you finish in the standings, and other teams finish in other positions in the standings too. I get all of that. But here's what I will say, James. It's important, and we say this every year when the Giants are coming off of a tough season. You don't want to get out of the gate struggling. That's just not going to bode very well. You always want to come out 2-2 or better in your first 4 games of the season. That's because typically NFL front office and coaches believe that it's a month into the season before you truly have a feel for what your team is and can be. So if you doggy paddle and are no worse than 2-2 after the first 4, that is standard operating procedure to hope for. And then you try to win the other quarters of the schedule as you go down the line and eventually get through 17 games. My hope for the Giants, if I'm looking at their opponents, I'm absolutely hoping for them that they get at least 2 of their easier, can I say easier in quotes, games in the first month of the season in September. The Raiders, I think, are one of their easier opponents. The New Orleans Saints probably are also one of their easier opponents. Perhaps the Chicago Bears could be considered that as well. And I think the New England Patriots would be the other team. Now, all 4 of those opponents on the Giants' 2025 schedule are on the road. That does add a little twist to it. But when you look at the other teams on the schedule, the division, the AFC West, the NFC North, oh man, it's pretty daunting. So it would really help out the Giants a great deal if they could get probably at least 2 of those 4 teams that I just mentioned early on in September. And that might help them build a little traction and a little momentum. All right, let's see. Who else do we have here? Scott Young. Good evening, Paul. Any news on Jackson Dart and what his number is going to be? It doesn't matter, Scott, because whatever number that they give the guys at the rookie minicamp, that doesn't necessarily hold. They can change the number by the time they get to the veteran minicamp. They can change the number when they get to the real summer minicamp in July. And then they can change the number again before the first week of the season after the final 53 has been determined. So I've had a lot of people ask me, oh, I want to get Cam Scatterboo's number. I want to get Jackson Dart's number. What is Abdul Carter going to settle on? Here's the thing, and I guarantee you this. If any of those draft choices hit the field on Friday morning, every newspaper guy there is going to immediately get to their thumbs, hit up their phones on Twitter, and start pumping out numbers of these guys. And so many fans are going to get all excited, and they're going to see those numbers, and they're going to freak out, and they're going to start ordering shirts, or they're going to start going to the websites that do the novelty shirts or the personalized shirts, and people are going to start going crazy. And it's all for nothing. It is all for nothing. Because none of the numbers that they wear during the rookie minicamp have to hold for the regular season. I just gave you 3 different times between now and week 1 where they'll be allowed to change their numbers if they choose. So please, don't blow up Twitter and don't get all giddy when people start posting on Twitter the numbers that the rookies are wearing at the minicamp on Friday morning. There's going to be people rushing to be the first one to put out the numbers. And it's not going to mean a hill of beans. You people who are watching the show tonight, you're going to be educated. You're going to know not to overreact to such posts. But nonetheless, there'll be thousands and thousands who do because they weren't watching tonight's program. Oh, let's see. What else do we have here? Pat and Deb Dolan say, hey, Paul, is it possible they trade Thibodeaux? I can't see them keeping 4 quarterbacks. Well, here's what I will say. I think they will keep all 4 going to training camp. And you never know if somebody's going to get hurt. But I'll say this. You're right. I don't see the Giants keeping 4 on the 53. To be frank, I think they'll keep 3, obviously. As long as Wilson, Winston, and Dart are healthy and nobody has to go to injured reserve, they'll have 3 on the 53 opening day. Which means, in all likelihood, if everything goes according to plan and everybody's healthy, Tommy DeVito's the odd man out. So unless they can get a trade for him during that final week of cuts, well, there's only one cut now, as you know. They go right from 90 to 53. Unless they can get a trade and find a suitor for him and make a deal, I'm sure that, Tommy's going to be the odd man out of the 4 quarterbacks. He'll be waived, and then he'll have to go through waivers. I think another team will claim him. I think Tommy DeVito is good enough to be a number 3 quarterback for a lot of teams in the National Football League. So I think he'll get claimed. If he doesn't get claimed, I'd say there's a really good chance the Giants invite him back to the practice squad. Then it's up to Tommy if he wants to do that. He does not have to. When you invite a guy to your practice squad, he gets to choose whether or not he's going to do it. If you are claimed off of waivers by another team, you don't get to choose. You have to go to that team. So DeVito could turn down any potential offer to stay on the Giants practice squad, or he could decide maybe another team has a practice squad offer for him and he decides that he's going to go there because the odds of him advancing his career might be better in another spot. That could happen too. But certainly right now, the way the numbers are looking, the odds are probably not very good for Tommy DeVito to remain a Giant. But hey, he's been a really good guy. He's been a pro. He's worked hard. He's been a good teammate. He's won games in this league before. He's proved that he belongs in the National Football League, certainly as a solid number 3. I was hoping that when he got more time this past season, maybe he could prove to be a solid number 2. He never quite got there. That doesn't mean he can't. And if he gets into the right spot, I think there's still some upside there. And I just wish him well. No matter how it lands and how it turns out, I wish that Tommy DeVito does well because he does belong in the National Football League. And I'd like to see him, have success and continued success. Because let's face it, he's been on the Giants active roster, started games and won games over the course of 2 seasons. That says a lot. All right, let's see. What do we have here? Oh, a whole bunch of guys talking to each other. Okay, here we go. Scott Young says, instead of bringing in another receiver, I'd like to see Hyatt get his shot. We moved in the draft to get him. Let's get him on the field first. Scott, that's part of what I've tried to explain. Jalen Hyatt is a mystery player for me. One of the biggest mysteries that I've found in what's now going to be my 43rd straight season of covering Giants football. It is a mystery to me. I do not know why he has not blossomed and he has not claimed the role that they had carved out for him when they moved up to get him in the 3rd round of the draft a couple of years ago. It's got to be time now. It's got to be. It's year 3. This is the time to break out, bust out, show what you've got. If Jalen Hyatt can do that, it's going to make the Giants' passing game a lot more dangerous. Without question, it behooves the Giants to unlock Jalen Hyatt's talent. There is no doubt. Will it happen? I just don't know. I know he wants it to happen. He's got a great work ethic. He's a pro. He's got a tremendous attitude. He's very eager. He wants to learn. He wants to be good. He does everything that you could want a guy to do. And yet, it hasn't happened yet. And the sand in the hourglass is starting to run a little thin. So we will see how that works out. I know everybody who knows Jalen Hyatt's rooting for him. I will tell you that. He has a lot of people who would like to see him do well. And the Giants would be at the head of that list. Believe me. All right, let's see what we have here. Big Blue says, when the schedule is released, I'm going 4.5 under games in prime time. Well, I can't get into that type of speculation, my friend, but I do understand where you're coming from. Arnold Stevenson says freedom in his brackets. Good evening, Paul. Tell us who you would like the first 8 games. Well, I can't go that far. I mean, that would be kind of crazy, but I just gave you 4 potential opponents. I would love to see the Giants get 2 of those teams in the first month of the season, or at least 2 of those teams in the first 5. You don't want to come out of the blocks, especially knowing, that the team needs to build some momentum. They need to feel good about themselves against some powerhouse teams. You don't want to play Kansas City and Mahomes at MetLife Stadium week 1. Obviously, you don't want to do that. You probably don't want to face one of your division rivals because the division has really kicked the Giants in the stomach an awful lot over the last several years. So I don't think you want to do that either. But look at some of the other opponents that the Giants have this year. They got a home game against Green Bay, Kansas City, San Francisco, Minnesota, and San Diego. Maybe you want a home game against Minnesota to start things off? We've already seen that and done that before, but now it's J.J. McCarthy at the controls. Maybe because he's going to be, making his NFL debut. Maybe you want to open with the Vikings. Now, the Vikings have a lot going for them. They got a lot of talent. That's a good team. But the quarterback situation is certainly now a little bit of a question mark. No matter how much they think about McCarthy, who knows what he's going to be like, coming out of the box. So maybe Minnesota might not be such a bad idea. But as I said to you, for me, if you want to, if you want to list the potential softer spots on the schedule, I'm still thinking it's New England, New Orleans, Las Vegas, and Chicago. Those are all road games. Minnesota would be the one home team where you might be able to make a case that they may not be clicking on all cylinders in September. Road opponents besides the division and the teams I mentioned, you also have road games in Detroit. That's going to be a bear. Pardon the pun. And, of course, the Denver Broncos out of the AFC West. And Sean Payton and Bo Nix certainly had things going last year when they were one of the surprise teams of the 2024 season. James O'Keefe says, schedule is brutal, but we should be a more competitive team this year. Lots of dogs on this roster. Won't take losing lightly, in my opinion. Aiden Fink says, everyone thought the Giants had an easy schedule to start 2024 with Minnesota and Washington. Little did we know, 2 playoff teams, and there's so much turnover in the NFL. And you're right, Aiden. There's no doubt about that. That's why I don't like to go off the numbers. Everybody looks at last year's won-loss records, puts up the percentages, the overall percentages of every team's opponent the following year, and they say, well, they've got the toughest schedule. So yes, everywhere you go, you're going to see charts, you're going to see numbers, and you're going to see lists that tell you the Giants have an absolutely brutal schedule. Well, we just went over the teams. Forget what the numbers say. We know these teams should be pretty good. Okay? So yes, it's going to be a difficult schedule. Even if a couple of these teams don't turn out to be what they're supposed to be, it should still be quite a challenging schedule. I think that's fair to say. But I won't rank them. I won't put them in a certain slot. I'll just say this looks like a very challenging schedule. That's as far as I'm going to go, because those charts based on last year's winning percentages, like, you're right, Aiden. What do they mean? What do they really mean? Okay? You can talk in generalities, but it's really not fair to talk specifics. A-Tracks DeWitt says, hit that like button. Yeah, absolutely. Please do. We love for people to like the program. We're here every Wednesday. At least that's the plan, and most Wednesdays, unless I've got to tell you otherwise because the Giants' schedule changes and it makes more sense to do a different day. We will be back next Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, for the schedule release show. And that's going to be all about you guys. I'll give you my analysis, and then I'm going to open it up to you guys. I want you guys, every one of you who's watching our program or listening to our program, either live or on the archive, I want every single one of you to come at us here on the Big Blue Breakdown, to come at us with every opinion and every positive and negative thought you have about the schedule, because that's your chance to vocalize. Aiden Fink says, could we trade Thibodeaux for a 7th rounder toward the end of training camp? Sure you could. You know, if somebody wants to make a deal, you could. Now, you probably won't want to do it until you get to that final cutdown day and you've finished your practices. Remember, they finish practice, and then, they have the final preseason game. Then they have that little moratorium period, and then they have to announce the cuts. Well, you're not going to want to do anything until you get right up against it, because you're going to want to make sure that there's nothing physically wrong with Wilson, Winston, or Dart. You're going to want to make sure all 3 of those guys are fully healthy. Aiden says, what are the rules with claiming a guy off another team's practice squad? No, you don't claim a guy off the practice squad. Claiming a player means if he's waived by a team, he's got to have less than 4 years experience in the league, right? He gets waived. They go to last year's standings in reverse order, so the order of the draft. And they ask the team, okay, do you want to put in a claim for this guy? Do you want him? And that's how it works, and they go right down the list, okay? So the Tennessee Titans, for any player that gets waived coming out of training camp this year before the regular season opens, the Titans, the Browns, and the Giants are going to be 1, 2, and 3 at the top of the waiver wire to put in their claims for players. So let's get that straight in terms of waived and claimed. During the season, when you have a guy on the practice squad, any team in the NFL can sign him as long as he immediately goes to the other team's 53-man active roster. He has to stay there. I believe the rule is for a minimum of 2 weeks. And there are other idiosyncrasies involved in it too, but, obviously he gets active 53-man roster pay, so he's going to get a nice boost in pay, and then obviously he goes on somebody's active 53, which is a beautiful thing. They can't put him on their practice squad. He's got to be on their 53. In general, that's the most important part of the rule for practice squad mobility. Big Blue says, with Carter asking for 11 and 56, if he has a no-show first 4 weeks, the media for sure will go to town. I hope he stays mentally strong. Big Blue, I don't think you have to worry about that. I don't think Carter is gonna be a quiet player. I think, as you just heard the Brandon Short interview, and again, if you joined us late, the Brandon Short interview is going to be up on the New York Giants on SI web page, the YouTube page, in its entirety. Apart from the show, the interview will be there in its entirety. He can't say enough about Abdul Carter and believes that he'll be able to make an immediate impact right out of the gate for the Giants. James O'Keefe says, Paul, has there been any talks of joint practices with the Giants this training camp? Jets, Lions, where might they be? No, I don't have any information about that as we speak. Oh, Aiden Fink says, you said San Diego. Did I say San Diego? We're talking about the Chargers? Okay, you got me. Some habits are so hard to break. All right, X-Man 0071 says, my prediction is Giants will win 7-8 games this year. Well, that would be a tremendous boost off of 3 wins of last year. That would qualify as significant improvement. Wouldn't you say? I do believe so. Timothy Menays, one of our regulars. Hey, Paul, who do you think? I think Carter takes, you means Carter, I'm sure, takes snaps from. When all 3 edge rushers are on the field, who do you think they take off? Well, I would think that would be Micah McFadden, to be honest. I suspect that's where the snaps would come from. If Thibodeaux and Burns and Carter are all on the field together, I suspect that Micah McFadden would probably be the guy who loses those snaps. Timothy Menays continues, says Carter should wear 51, half LT, half Sims. And, by the way, 51 is usually a linebacker's number, based on the old school rules in the league before they changed it and decided to let everybody start picking numbers from 1 to 99. All right, folks. Well, that wraps up tonight's edition of the Big Blue Breakdown Live. I don't have anybody else in the chat. We didn't get any audio or video calls tonight. That's okay. Again, we'll be back next Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, with our New York Giants live schedule breakdown show. We look forward to hearing you then. And don't forget, coming up at 8 p.m. tonight, we're going to give you the link. Okay, we're going to give you the link on my Twitter page, @GiantsWFAN, beginning at 10 p.m. tonight. 10 p.m. tonight, we'll have the entire interview, just the interview, aside from the show, that I did with Brandon Short, former Giants and Penn State linebacker, earlier this evening, as he gave us some great information and details on not only Abdul Carter, but had an awful lot to say about Theo Johnson as well. Well, that'll do it for tonight's show. I'm Paul Dottino. So good to talk to you folks again tonight. We'll see you next time.